Pat McDonald, it is almost officially fall. I mean, it might as well be because it's
Yes.
September. I'm growing out my Serpico-esque beard and
Oh,
hair.
you look great, man.
Thank you. We took the last month off, not because we wanted to, but just because our schedules got so bonkers.
Yeah.
But
It
now
was
we're
August. August is the month to take off, right? Right. Everybody takes off in August. We did the same.
yeah, everyone needs a little break.
Hmm.
But now we're back talking about a film that I'm very excited to discuss with you because
Very
this was a
much.
first time watch for me. It is the
Same
50.
here.
Yeah, I can't believe you've never seen Serpico. I can understand me not having seen Serpico, but I mean,
Well,
this would have been out when you were like in your
right.
young 20s,
No,
like
no. Oh, for
Pacino
God's sake.
coming
I
off.
was 13 years old.
Wait a second.
It was
Oh, I
made in
can't. No,
1973.
I can't do math. See,
Oh my
that's the
God.
problem. For some
No,
reason I thought you were 23.
no,
You
it's
were
like the
13.
picture of
Okay.
Dorian Gray. You just think I'm 75 or whatever that would come out to be.
All apologies. Okay,
It would
so
be 70.
all
Jesus.
right, but listen. You would have been 13 and anxious to go see a movie where,
Well,
Michael Corleone becomes a cop
right.
and takes
No,
on corruption.
I wasn't that deep, man. I will tell you one thing though. I love Mad Magazine, and I wanted to see this movie because they did a parody called Serpicool. So here you go. I have named myself after Serpicool. I said Serpico. It's Serpicool. So that was the parody, drawn by the great Jack Davis, and you know, Bob's your uncle. Always wanted to see it, and I finally got to.
I have a bunch
Bob's
of
your
old
uncle.
Mad magazines and I went looking for it. I don't have that one. The one that's I
It's.
looked up the cover and everything. I'm like, damn it, it's not in my collection. So I got to find that
I
somewhere.
used to love the covers.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I love that magazine. The fact that it closed its doors is just sad to me. I lived an entire lifetime where I saw Mad Magazine close their doors. Crazy. Anyway.
Yeah. It's they still put out like reprints and things like
Yeah,
that, but
yeah, they
it
have
sucks.
special issues. Whoever bought the brand, whatever
Right.
hedge fund bought the brand. Oh, you
I think
got
it was
National
Warner.
Lampoon? I'll show you album to buy Mad Magazine.
I think that was actually Warner Brothers publishing arm, at least for a while, but
Oh yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
it's
I think
weird
so.
because every once in a while I'll go to like a Barnes& Noble or a comic shop and I'll
Right.
see what looks like a new issue of Mad out. And I'm like, oh, it's just another reprint,
Yeah,
collection.
yeah,
I
yeah.
die a little inside. But
Well, I'll tell you what. If I go home, I think I have a cachet of Mads. Would you like them?
yeah.
Okay, they're yours.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem, bro.
thank you.
I'll
But
keep them in a bag like I kept your cats video for like what, a year and a half. You
yes, we
weren't
are talking.
pining for it though. You weren't saying, "Where's my cat's DVD?"
Hey, look, I cherish the Cats movie, the most recent one. I don't even care if there's a
Dude,
butthole cut out there.
dude,
I like the regular version.
I'm on your side. I like the movie a lot. I didn't love it, but if you saw the play, it pretty much followed the play. That's why I was like, what's the fuss? What is the fuss? Because they don't
It's
have a-holes? Who
uh,
cares?
well, I mean, James Corden was in it. But anyway, let's
He
talk
was
about
good in
Serpico.
prom. He was
Well,
good in prom.
that's true. All right, let's talk about Serpico.
Serpicool.
Serpicool, yes. Um, it's such a strange movie. I guess I had expectations going into it because I'd never seen it, but I'd seen somehow the opening scene like on cable where he's been
Yeah,
shot in the face and he's being driven to the hospital. He's bleeding. He's going in and out of
right,
consciousness. It's
right,
very dark. And so I knew that it was about a New York cop based on a true
right.
story,
Yep,
and he fought
yep.
against corruption in the department. I just thought it was going to be like an action, almost like a Dirty Harry type of movie where he's like just blowing people away as he fights his way up the chain of corruption. But no, this
A
is
full
a
third of it's a trial.
yeah, it's a very not laid back because it does have forward momentum, but it's much more of a drama than it is an action film. What
Right.
was your
No,
expectation
absolutely.
going in?
That's interesting. My take going in was sorry, I just pulled my earphones out. Um I remember like you said, I knew it was about a New York cop. I didn't know about the corruption thing, but I knew it was a true story. So I didn't know the angle that the film took. There was just a lot of talking in this. It was really gritty, and they used a lot of interesting places. But some of these places got kind of forced on you after a while. I wasn't. It didn't feel natural. Like the French Connection. Every scene in that is authentic. If you see the French Connection, and that's what I was comparing it to because they were made a year apart. So that was my big thing. I expected it. I expected it to be grittier, and Sidney Lumet did it a little too lit or something. I don't know. It's very weird.
It is strange because he lives Frank Serpico lives in this kind of really nice garden apartment that
Mhm.
is better lit than any garden apartment I've ever
Right.
visited or seen on film.
That's what
I
I
mean,
mean. That's a perfect example of that.
it's like he's living in a penthouse above the city.
And
Um,
boy, did he date attractive women. How about that?
how about it? Now this is kind of my it's strange because the movie it's a half a century old now. I can't believe it. But
Everybody is in their 80s that was in it, if they're
well,
still
well,
alive.
well, Pacino was 33 when he did this.
Oh,
Um,
man.
and
Hoo-ha.
it's weird because he did this like, the year after The Godfather. It's like a year or
Between the
two.
Godfathers, between the,
Right.
1 and 2. Crazy.
Right, because it was 72, 73,
Yeah.
74, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
What
it
a
was
streak.
it was
Holy
kinda
cow.
distracting because I kept thinking of it as, like, clean cut Michael Corleone, and now he's, like, gone full, street hippie look, and, he does have a fantastic mane and a glorious beard. Michael Corleone was in the military, and he gets out, and he goes to, kind of work for his family unwittingly and falls into
Right.
corruption, and over the course of 3 movies, he becomes seduced by
He
this
becomes
power.
the power, yeah.
Y Yeah, Frank Serpico, comes out of the police academy and goes to work as a New York cop, and he's surrounded by corruption from
Amazing.
almost moment 1, but it's funny because he's not this straight-laced, like, never done nothing wrong
Right.
guy, because there are certain, uh, moments, scenes, interactions with
Yeah.
cops and criminals that he lets a few things slide here and there, so it takes us a while to get into his code of ethics.
Right.
Um, but
Well
everybody around him is so, so dirty.
well, yeah, and that's the thing. They had to act like regular human beings while they're taking all this graft. And that was what was one of the most fascinating things about the way his fellow cops played their characters. They weren't bad guys. They just saw a bounty and wanted to partake. And when he starts refusing it, um, I, I think even the audience is saying, "Wouldn't it be easier, Frank, if you just took your cut? You can give it to charity, like they said, give it to charity." But that, I mean, and that's what makes it so interesting because he will not waver on that. And there's very few people in the whole department that would do it except for Tony Roberts, who was a fictionalized version of the real guy who knew the people that could get up the chain.
And there was the one guy also, the or the cop towards the end that they sort of team up with in this dynamic, trio to go to the New York Times.
Right, right,
But it takes a lot of digging, and it's almost a miracle that it seems like he was the one guy in that entire precinct that Serpico could trust.
right,
And it's fascinating because the way this unfolds, I mean, I think it's a testament to Sidney Lumet,
yeah,
is the audience becomes instantly distrustful of
right,
anybody that pops up on screen who's not Frank Serpico.
right,
And the people who turn out to be trustworthy, it's almost a miracle because there's so many folks who turn
right,
on him or who are suddenly he thinks he's got a glimpse of hope because he's got a new partner who is willing to take the corruption money and store it away from him and not away for him in case he changes his mind later, but he's not going to
right.
tell anybody. Cut to the next scene. Oh, that guy's been transferred. Here's your new partner who's going to keep, he's going to put the screws to you. It's it
Yeah,
really is this kind of walls closing in
yeah,
claustrophobic
yeah.
drama.
And I did read this in the background, Wikipedia, but the way they filmed it was to make it more claustrophobic as it went down. And maybe some of those overlit scenes are part of it. I don't know. But, they talked about wardrobe. They talked about, mise en scène, whatever you want to call that. You know, everything within the area of the screen. My couch is mise en scène, for example, because it's in back of me. Your bookshelf is mise en scène. So there were some very interesting things going on in this movie. I kind of wrote the best things that I liked about it, which was the party scene. How about the party scene where he's just dancing? That was great.
It was. It's nice to see Pacino cut loose, but look, these are things you liked, right? I'll just
Right.
say that the party scene, I think, while it was fun, it's sort of symptomatic of what I didn't like about the movie, which was every time we start to get a glimpse of his personal life that
Yeah.
isn't tied to his family, like his mother and father,
Right.
it's just so choppy. Right? He's got the one girlfriend that he meets, and they've got a thing together, and then she leaves him, and then it seems like a week later, he meets this other girl, and then the next time we see them together, they've already moved in and been together for months, and then they're breaking up. I'm like, this guy's life is a complete mess. But
Well,
when he's yelling at these people, I'm like, just calm down, buddy. I have no context for what your relationship is like.
interesting.
He seems like an
Yeah.
asshole.
Yes. You make some excellent points there. There wasn't a lot of motivations, especially about why a woman would stay with him, because every indication is I was like, "Woo, thank goodness you're leaving him. Here, let me help you move out." You know,
Well,
that's what I want to say.
right, and that's the thing is, I think it is based on a true story. It's adapted from a book,
Right,
but I would assume that there are other bits of creative license that were taken in this film. I feel like, and maybe this is a more of a modern conception of how you
right.
would do it. I would just stick with one girl and show the dissolution of the relationship. If he had multiple partners over this course, just kind of like take those elements and put them into one relationship and let that stand, because there is just too much jumping around. It also doesn't help that they're both blonde. I mean, I guess he had a type, but I'm like, was this the chick from the beginning of the movie, or is this at the end? And I don't know who's doing what or to who.
Glad you used the term chick, but anyway.
I'm an old-fashioned guy.
But,
I also call people dudes, so dudes and chicks, all right? I'm straight out of the '50s. Look at my hair.
no, you know, anyway, moving on. Uh, yeah, I like the party scene. I liked the glimpses of stars of the future. Now, the first guy he talks to after graduation, the desk sergeant, he only says, "Hey," or whatever. He just has one or two lines. That's Dean Wormer from Animal House.
That was
It was.
okay, yeah.
I was gonna look up his name before, but you got on the line. And also, and I'm sure everybody out there in movie land knows the name, but you have to remember, I see over 150 films a year. I have no memory left. So let's just put that out there right now so everybody knows. I do not know the actor who played Dean Wormer right now. And
Well,
he's looking it up as we speak. Very good.
I
And then Judd Hirsch at the end. Judd Hirsch is one of the guys that takes his parents down the hall. And the only reason I knew that, I was watching on Prime Video and I had to pause it. And when I paused it, they put up all the actors. And I said, Judd Hirsch. So I rewound the scene and there he was. I
wow,
think
I
he
didn't
just
even
says,
catch that.
stand back when his parents come through. And then he escorts them down the hall.
I have to go watch that again. I didn't even pick that up. John Vernon is the actor who played Dean Wormer,
Mm.
yes.
Ding, 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 ding. Thank you,
Judd
sir.
Hirsch, really. It's kinda like how, I rewatched The Towering Inferno recently, which we talked about a few years ago,
I
and
love
how
that movie.
Dabney Coleman is in that movie, but he
Oh,
shows up
yeah.
for, like, a 2-minute scene at the very end. Um, but, no, I also picked up on, James Tolkien, who was, the teacher in Back to the Future, the
Oh, yeah,
great
yeah. He had a good scene.
yeah, the great M. Emmett Walsh,
Oh,
uh,
God. I
he's on
was
screen for, like, 30 seconds, it's
I
nuts.
know, and I was thinking, man, you may have thought nothing was happening back then, but you're gonna have a great career, sir. That's what I said to the young Emmett. And he
And
wasn't so young. He was probably middle-aged.
yeah, it's strange because like, we cut from then to back to school, like, 9 years later, and I swear he looked older in this movie.
He did. Oh, no, you're talking about James Tolkien. I was talking
No,
about
I was talking about M. Emmett Walsh.
oh, right.
Back to School versus Back to the Future. Too many Back to movies, yeah. Um, but the last
There is too many Back to movies. Thank you.
Back to the Beach with,
Yep,
Frankie
yep.
Avalon? No, but no, the last, cameo, not really a cameo because, again, these are actors that we know now, but back in '73, it's like, they haven't even really made it yet. F. Murray Abraham shows up as one of the 3, cops with Serpico at the end as they go into that apartment building where he gets shot,
I'll be
right?
damned.
And
I missed
he
that
and
one.
well, he and Pacino would star together again 10 years after this in Scarface.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, Burt Reynolds said to me, when I was starting out, I'd take a part where there's 6 guys on a horse. Okay. He said, I'm in one of those westerns, wanted dead or alive or whatever. So he said, we're riding. And he goes, there would be a guy next to me that would work for the next 30 years. Like Bob Redford would be next to me. Okay. And then he said, other 3 guys, I never heard from him again. But he said that would happen all the time. He would be in these smaller parts, and there would be Sal Mineo, or there would be, whatever. It's just crazy how that works. How the magic fairy dust comes on certain people and not others.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that's probably an entire movie
Yeah.
of, how did they start? I mean, you could do an entire series on Kurt Russell alone. It's going from child actor in Disney movies to frickin' Snake Plissken.
The guy
But
was in an Elvis movie. It happened at the World's Fair.
and he also played Elvis later on, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes, he
There you go,
did.
full
And
circle.
historically, that was an amazing thing because they ran that against a replay of Gone with the Wind. Now, Gone with the Wind had already been on television, but this was only the second time they were going to show it, and Elvis kicked its butt. Everybody'd seen Gone with the Wind, so they just watched the Elvis bio with Kurt Russell.
Well, on top of that, Gone with the Wind on television, my god, what is that, a 5-night event on ABC or
I think it
something?
was a 2-night event.
Whew. Wow.
But
But, okay.
one of the things I wanted to say about Pacino too, I forget how good early Pacino is. He's so good. He really embodies this role. He embraces it. I know he's a method guy and everything, but the point is it's you almost see the wheels turning with Frank Serpico. I mean, it is some sort of mental depressive illness, but I think he studied some sort of mental condition because Serpico, I have to say, he's kind of mental. That outburst he has a big outburst in an office where he just destroys things like Orson Welles and Citizen Kane, during the scene where he breaks up the room. Serpico does the same thing, and he manages to throw a guy in the slammer.
Well, here's the thing,
That was an amazing scene.
it was, and we'll get back to that because I think it says a lot about the environment he was in and
Yep.
why he was so crazy, specifically by the end, is
Yeah.
because it's not only that, and I don't know the full history of police movies and cop dramas, but, this is 1973, it
Yep.
feels like watching this might be at least an early example of the corrupt cop on screen, and, like, the
Yeah.
systemic kind of the idea of systemic corruption,
Right.
and how it affects different people. So
I
you
would
get
say
the
systemic corruption. It's the first. I mean, I think there have been some TV pieces and movie pieces where they had individual bad cops, but I've never seen it in the whole system.
well, I think that, when he graduated from the police force, he's kind of like wide-eyed. He's very excited to get to work because he wants to help people. He wants to do the right thing. And as he falls further down this hole and realizes that there's nobody there who cares about his moral code, there are people who are antagonistic against it, and they're willing to stop him because he's going to potentially halt the gravy train.
Right.
Of course, it's gonna drive him manic because nobody's on his side, nobody will listen to him without turning him in. His girlfriends can't understand what he's going through, And so his deterioration throughout the film, I think, almost culminates in that scene, even though it's not at the very end. But he picks up this guy who is some kind of a mob heavy, or he's mob adjacent or something, brings him into the station for picking up, doing a pickup. And when he gets to the station, brings the guy into the front desk, says, book him or whatever. He goes out to his car to get something. He comes back, the guy's gone, walks upstairs to the offices, and this, maid guy or whatever is hanging out, just shooting the breeze with the other cops. They're laughing and hooting and hollering because they all know each other. Serpico tries to get the guy to empty his pockets. He won't help him, so he
Right.
rips down his pants, basically
Yeah.
throws him in his metal slammer, and then he goes back out. And the outburst that you mentioned, he's kicking over chairs. He puts the chair back, but he's trying to set it right again. He just ends up slamming it repeatedly into the floor. And he goes and he sits down and he gets the guy's rap sheet or whatever. It's like, do you guys know
Uh,
what that guy is, what he first got arrested for? For
uh,
killing a cop. And then the scene
uh,
ends and you're like, man, I don't even know if those guys care.
they don't. They don't.
It's wild because he's trying to stand up for, the good guys, but it turns out there aren't really any good guys, going all the way up to the mayor's office.
Hey man, you're pulling down two to 4,000 a month during 1970 whatever. That 4,000 a month was what a man made the whole year. The average working man made about 4 grand a year, and you're pulling 4 grand a month plus your cop salary plus your pension. You know, I mean, could that movie be made today? I don't think so. I think the Back to Blue movement is so strong right now that they're allowing that corruption to continue, or we're allowing that corruption to continue.
No, that movie could be made today. I mean, because I
Really?
mean,
I don't know, man.
dude, we just came off, and we're seeing the repercussions of that ill-fated movement of the defund the police movement. But that was huge for about 2 years. And you're talking about liberal Hollywood. Of course, it could be made today.
Oh, I don't know, man. I really don't. I think there would be too much of a backlash because all they do is, I'm not going to get into a political thing, but the manufacturing of outrage is a cottage industry right now. That's all I'll say about that. So,
Yeah. Well, no
anyway,
matter what type of movie you're going to make, you're going to get half the audience not liking it and half of it going to see it, or waiting for
not
VOD.
necessarily. I just saw The Inventor, the Leonardo da Vinci cartoon. That thing's the greatest. Anybody could see that film.
No, I'm talking about specifically this issue, not
Oh,
not
this
any
issue.
movie, but yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. No, you're absolutely right. Even back then, I mean, the backlash was tremendous back then, but I think society was a little more tolerant of, you know, arts arts being art. You know what I'm saying? It's and you were talking earlier about the true story basis of this. His partner was 50-50 on this, the guy playing Tony Roberts. So they made the character a fictional character, and Serpico couldn't watch it until 2010, the whole thing, because it was so fictionalized. And then his partner got very angry because he had a separate deal to do a separate movie and blah, blah, blah. So
Man. Well,
so yeah, I mean, I don't know. The jury's out, but I say absolutely they would not be able to make that movie today. Another thing I liked the breakup. I thought the breakup was very natural. I think having been through, my share, um, I think it was handled in a way that was sensitive to both characters. Each character did what they thought they had to do, which is a natural thing in that situation. So anyway, it was good.
it was because I like the setup of it. I mean, he
Yeah,
shows up to a cafe in the middle of the day or
right,
whatever. He hands her this note that apparently he found at their apartment,
right.
and it's like, meet me in the cafe. And she said, I just didn't. I think he said, you wrote me a note to say you were leaving, but to meet you at a cafe. And she
Right.
said, yeah, I wanted to talk to you someplace where you wouldn't yell. And he says, you think I won't yell in the cafe?
And the perfect Al Pacino yell, you know, you think I can't do it, but
I Let's talk about that. I haven't seen a lot of early Pacino,
mhm.
but I'm so used to, post Scent of a Woman Pacino where he's got a deeper
Hoo-ha!
voice. Well, it's just that, in this movie, he's so nasally. Like
Yeah,
the
talks
scene at
like
the deli earlier is like, "There's no fat on the sandwich." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, he talks like one of the Bowery Boys. Hey,
I
Hutch.
I almost wanted a version where he goes back and redubs his lines today.
Oh, that would
So
be funny. Oh my god, would that be funny? Awesome, man. But that, the breakup felt real to me, it felt how like 2 human beings rather than some sort of, you know, flowery Hallmark sort of thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also thought Tony Roberts was awesome. I'm a big Tony Roberts fan. I like him, I know we can't mention his name. He will not be named, but Tony Roberts was his partner for a long time. He did Annie Hall, he did Manhattan. He was a great like second banana to the person that made those films.
I'll say it, Pat, you don't have to be vague. It's Woody Allen. Like, that's something out of The Nun too. That was very good.
Oh, great. That was my audition tape. We're sending this to the Bloom House. Send it to the Bloom House. I can do that naturally. I don't need any digital effects.
We're gonna send this to the
And my
Nut House,
face,
maybe.
my face is melting so much that I can do that naturally.
Speaking of things happening to faces,
Anyway, Tony Roberts, yeah.
well, no, I was gonna say he was very good, but and this is again, I think this is a testament to the performance and also to Sidney Lumet. I kept waiting for the shoe to drop with this guy. I'm like, is he really on the level?
Oh,
Or
Tony
is
Roberts?
Yeah, or is
Yeah,
his
yeah. No,
character on
no,
the
I
verge
felt
of
that
like getting
too.
paid off and turning his friend in? I could never trust him. And maybe that was the whole point, is because Serpico never felt he could trust anybody either.
Right. And even in the fact that he found out that he didn't have the right connection the first time. So he thought he was BSing him and he wasn't. He said, this guy doesn't work, I have another guy. He was that way. So anyway, that whole thing was well done too. Now that I think about it, I sort of like the film better just talking about it because it is a film that is endlessly fascinating for discussion. I mean, there are larger societal issues in it that could be discussed like in sociology class. You literally could show this film in sociology class to give somebody an example of the levels they were working on in the 1970s. So,
There's a scene where Serpico has, he's got a perp, he's chasing him down, and a patrol car happens by, and then they start shooting, and there's like this crazy one-way shootout, and Serpico and the perp are hiding behind like a dumpster or something.
yeah,
And
yeah.
after everything is controlled or calmed down, Serpico like tears into the patrolman. He's
Oh
like,
my
"You
God.
didn't look, you didn't announce yourself. Like, what are you doing? Are you trying to get me killed?"
The only
And this
problem was the squibs weren't very realistic. It was almost like a pop gun sort of sound. Not that I expect to hear, bang gunfire, but it was just odd. It just happened so fast, and also the only reason you knew is that the windows were shot out of that car.
Yeah, I guess so. I just describe it as an overall like tinny aesthetic from the 1970s. Maybe that's why I couldn't
Well,
take
yeah,
Pacino's voice.
that too. Sound
Um,
design was not the science it is now.
no, of course not. I will say Serpico has one of the all-time, I think, greatest reveals I've ever seen in a movie that tells you everything you need to know about the truth of a situation. It's
Mhm.
when Serpico and his, partner guy, they go to dinner with, I can't tell if it's a commissioner or a chief or somebody else because there's such a rotating door of politicians and
I think
superintendents and everything.
he's kind of a desk guy, but has a high rank, and he doesn't want to take money either. Are
Uh,
you talking about the meeting at the house?
no, this is the
Oh,
restaurant.
the
But they
restaurant.
they sit down with this guy because
Okay,
his partner is
right.
like, yeah, this is gonna be. He's got connections. He's gonna really help us out. But it's close-ups of our two heroes, and I think you see the guy they're talking to from the back, if I recall correctly.
Mhm.
And when they cut to the frontal view of the man, it's very conspicuous. He has the world's most gigantic lobster, and he's just like
I
basting
know.
it in butter. And I'm like, oh, he's on the take too.
Well,
He's
that
he's
was it.
he's he's saying a good game about like, guys, I don't know if this is really going to work out. He's not saying like you should be careful. He's like, nah, maybe, I don't know. I'll look into it or whatever. But like, you look at that lobster and the way he's delicately treating it, like there's no way. And I think they realized it at that moment too. But it's just a great way to use film language to really drive that knife into your heart because they really got their
Well,
hopes up.
well, also too, let's just say the real Frank Serpico had to move to Switzerland. Let's just say that, and then you'll get an idea where what his status was within the department.
Well, I mean, the framing device of him being shot, that's how we meet him in the beginning of the film, is he's in the back
Right.
of that cop car being driven to the hospital, which is also very reminiscent of, the Pacino film Carlito's Way, which he would do 20 years after this, but they both are bookended in the same way. But at the
So it
end.
starts with the end. Carlito's Way starts with the end and then
Eh
goes approaches it.
Right. Have you seen Carlito's Way?
I have not.
Oh, very
Cool.
good film, great role, great turn by Sean Penn.
Okay.
Kinda has the same, Scarface problem in that Pacino is playing I think he's like a Puerto Rican drug kingpin. It's like, "Okay." But
You're
anyway,
not
and both.
selling it to me. Let me put it that way. Although Sean Penn's a good selling point.
Yeah, there's a couple of hurdles you have to go over, and Pacino he's very entertaining in that over the top kind of way, and he looks sharp. Penelope Ann Miller's in it, wonderful
Oh
film, but
yeah.
they both open with the main character having just been shot, and then
Okay.
kinda, like, flashing back over the whole life and then bookending, winding back around. But
What one thing I wanted to say about Serpico, just before you forget, the beginning of the siren that goes into the whole thing they're bringing him to the hospital about. So go on. That really affected me.
well, it's also, if you wanna get all highfalutin about it, I don't know if this is on Lumet's mind or whatever, but it goes from, pitch silence to you kinda hear the siren, and then by the time he
Yeah,
gets to the hospital, it's, like, blaring in your
yeah,
ear, which
it's
is
so loud.
it's his descent into the realization of the corruption. It starts
Right.
small, and then it's overwhelming, and it's all he can
Yeah.
can hear.
No,
Um,
no, no. I mean, he was doing tricks like that. You're not incorrect. I mean, again, doing research on the film, I was kind of stunned at some of the things that were going on. That sometimes I noticed it and sometimes I didn't. Did you notice the scene where they were in the football stadium?
mhm.
That used to be NYU's football stadium. It was called Langdon Field. They shot a scene in it only because it was torn down that year. So I think they said, if you want to get something before it's torn down, go to Langham Field. So yeah,
What I
go
wanted to
ahead.
get to about, my point about the end scene at the hospital is
Yeah,
he's laid up, he's been shot in the cheek, and it miraculously didn't hit his brain. It, like, missed everything.
yeah,
But, going back to kind of like this Godfather idea of posting guards outside the room because you've got the guy who's, very valuable, witness. The 2 cops, they're sitting, across the door from each other. The
right,
one guy gets up to go in and check on him, and the other
right,
guy's like, "No, don't go in there." He's like, "Why not?" He's like, "They say the guy's no good. You can't fucking trust him." And I'm like, all throughout the movie, that phrase, the idea of trust has been completely flipped on his head. It's
yeah,
not that
yeah,
he's, dishonest, it's that he's too honest and the crooked cops can't trust him.
right.
It's this constant underscoring of corruption. It's just fascinating.
Well, and just to go quickly go to the police atmosphere of today. Um, it's a tug of war now. I think between the cops, their image, and the general public. It's depending on what segment of the general population you're in. And I think I, I always say that being a urban cop, a Chicago cop, for example, is the hardest job in the world. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. They ask them to do too many things. But in exchange for them doing too many things, there's a real hands off attitude on the other side of the spectrum, which I think can lead to things that we see in the movie. Whether or not it's going on today, I would speculate there is a form of it everywhere when it comes to whenever you're in a position of power, there's always a corrupting force.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's true, and it's unfortunate,
Yeah,
and
it is unfortunate. It
I could
is.
well, I can understand how people, because when I was doing some reading on this, when this came out, there was a big backlash against this from, police officers in
Yep.
particular. And it's hard because I'm not a cop. I've known a few cops in my
No.
lifetime, been very, good people.
Right.
But it is that idea of perhaps being personally offended because, like, well, I would never do that. I got into this to protect and serve, and they're painting all cops as bastards. It's got to be kind of tough, right? Because on some level, the movie is trying to draw attention to the idea that, there is police corruption, and here's a guy who tried to do something about it, and that did lead to good things like, internal affairs bureaus and the
Right.
Knapp Commission and
Right.
all that. But it's also crazy because at the end, there's press conferences with the mayor talking about like this New York Times piece is offensive to me personally and it's
McCarthyism.
egregious. Right, it's the new McCarthyism. And then at the end, when Serpico is giving his testimony, it
Right.
sweeps across the room, and all of the people that he was trying to warn about corruption, and they ignored him because they were in fact on the take, are sitting front and center. It's like a cartoon from hell.
It was just stunning. It was just stunning. And uh, uh, yeah, that was on the good side of it too. The very same station wagon my family owned played a prominent role in the film. It's
Huh?
called it's the Ford Country Squire. It has the woody panels on it, and I noticed whenever they were in a street scene, they just towed the same cars there. Because I first noticed, hey, it's the Country Squire again. And then I looked at the other cars, and then on the next scene, it was the same cars. They get a variety of cars like a Volkswagen Beetle, a Country Squire, an old Oldsmobile. So
I'll have
anyway,
to go back and I gotta
that's
look
it.
for that now along with Judd Hirsch. That's some great homework to do.
You got to see the Country Squire. I learned to drive on that son of a bitch.
Hey, something else that I want to own from this movie. I don't know if they make it anymore, but did you notice Serpico's fish ring?
No.
There was a piece of jewelry he wore. I can't remember what scene, but I think it was with one of his girlfriends. But it's like close up, and it's like a silver or a gold. It was hard to catch with the light, but it was like a metal ring that looked like a fish, but the tail would wag when he moved his fingers, like little fishy tail would wag. I'm like, that's such a random detail, but it just goes with his whole aesthetic.
Well, how about when when he was in the hospital, they put his all his jewelry in a row and showed it on the table. I said that is cool because they had to cut off his necklace. That was an interesting scene too when they were preparing the body to save. You said about his wound, his cheek wound, it
Hmm.
healed pretty nicely, I think. I could,
It it did. I wouldn't want to see the inside of his head.
right, right.
And they
Oh, he
said it
said
was
it was a
because
low caliber bullet, so it just
right,
pierced and didn't
right.
go any deeper. So I don't know.
Well, they said because it did, I guess it exploded somehow inside his head because they said that there were pieces of it that were near his carotid artery that they'd have to
Right,
check every once in a while to make sure it didn't, I
right.
guess, rupture it or
And
something.
sometimes your left side will feel kind of weird. I'm like, oh, that's a great life from now on. Thanks a lot. See you,
I know,
doc.
right, but you see him kind of hobbling off to his car. He's kind of a broken man in a lot of different ways, and you contrast that with when we first see him in the movie. It is again, it's a very like Corleone kind of figure, going from the wide optimist to at the end being so broken by this life that
Yeah,
is either
yeah,
thrust upon you or you chose in some way, and you just
yeah.
can't handle it.
Pretty remarkable. Pretty
Yeah.
remarkable. So, and having this discussion again, I think I like the film better after having this discussion because I think I think I felt it was a little out of date, you know, or out of its time, a little moldy around the edges. But corruption's corruption. I mean, if you focus just on that emotion and that happenstance within the film, then it's totally relevant. You know, it's just in another time. So some of the mannerisms and the, you know, I loved that was prime 70s flashback for me, man. But then, but I, again, I compare it to French Connection, which I think is just one of the greatest New York films ever made. And it, I halfway through Serpico, I was like, oh, this is good, but it's not as good as French Connection, which I felt was unfair. But that's where I was coming from when I sat down when you turned on the camera, because now I feel after our discussion that I have a much better appreciation for Serpico.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I think my only beef with the movie really is I wish they just would have left out all of the relationship stuff. I don't know what
Even the bathtub scene, sir. I will debate you on that.
I don't want any lip about me calling people chicks, and you're like, "Oh, what
I
a hubba
just
hubba, what about
said
the bathroom
bathtub,
scene?"
baby. I didn't describe anything. Whoa, whoa,
Yeah,
whoa, 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 whoa.
it was a hell of a tub. Um,
I
wow,
forget you can use glasses as a prop now. Oh, I've got a whole new line of wackiness coming up.
I
So
can't
what do we
wait.
have next month? Because I know in November we're gonna do executive or not executive. Was it executive action or oh dang it?
I don't hold on a
It's the
second.
Kennedy assassination film from 1973
Mhm.
with Burt Lancaster. Burt Lancaster. So anyway, that's what we're
Oh,
doing in
yeah, yeah.
November
Next
for this.
next month is Westworld.
Oh, do we have any choices besides Westworld?
What what choices are there besides Westworld? No.
Okay, I
Um,
haven't seen it, so I'll stick with it. But you
uh,
gave me choices this month, and I went with Serpicool.
and I don't remember what the other
There,
choices were, but I wanna see Westworld. No, over
yes, we'll
this
see
way.
Westworld, sir. Because it's not executive action though. What?
No,
Anyway,
executive action is November, then we're gonna wind it
ah,
out with our Christmas
whew,
movie in December for with, Meet Me in St. Louis.
meet me in St. Louis,
Yeah.
which was in the movie Haunting in Venice, which I loved. That was one of the things I liked about it.
I haven't seen any of I've told people I haven't seen any of
The
those
two oh,
movies.
you didn't see a Haunting in Venice. I thought you did a thing on it.
No, I haven't seen that,
Oh,
and I haven't seen the other 2 that they did with the Brana Perot.
no problem then. I won't say another word. But
Okay.
I heard a Saint Meet Me in St. Louis reference lately, and it was in the third Carol movie. I
Nice.
on my radio script, I have to write Pear, Pear, and Row, so I can pronounce the name. Otherwise, I still screwed up names. I screwed
Just
up
think
Marion Cotillard this morning. Is it Cotillard or I said Cotillard?
yeah, it's Cotillard. Yeah.
Oh, Cotillard, but I think I said lard. You know, it was. I can't. I'm terrible with names, as the running gag is in the critics circle. So I want
Well,
to keep the running gag going. You should listen to my radio shows each week. You can see me mangle names every week on WGBR Monroe, Wisconsin.
well, you just put something in my head. I know she's French, but now I'm wondering if Marion Cotillard, when she was a girl in school, if anyone ever called her Marion Cotillard, is
Yeah,
like is like a
but we're
bad
not
nickname.
English. That's an English
She
joke.
no, she's
If she
French.
did a transfer student to Boston, that would be first day. Hey,
Cody
go
Cotillard.
yard, come in, go park my car at Harvard Yard, Cotillard.
Ugh,
I think I have. Have you ever seen Seth Meyers' Boston accent movie trailer?
no.
It's one of the funniest things that I've ever seen on late night TV. Seth
Well,
Meyers is a player. He's a player. That guy is so funny. But this Boston accent movie trailer, go to YouTube right after this. You'll get a good laugh.
I'll do that, and I will put a link
And
to
I'll
it
say
down
that to the
in the trailer.
audience too.
There you go.
Yes, yes, I will, because I'm staring right at myself saying this to you.
You're saying it to
So,
me too.
okay, well, cool. We got the rest of the year mapped out, and I know October will be a busy month, but we'll squeeze it in. It's no big deal to watch like an hour and 45-minute movie. Although Serpico was 2 plus, which wasn't too
210.
bad. Yeah,
Which, again, if you take out all the relationship stuff, you get that down to a lean hour 45, and it's perfect.
it humanizes him.
Sure. Anyway, Pat McDonald,
Ah,
HollywoodChicago.com, and all various entertainment media. Thank you very much for talking Serpico
yeah, a
and
lot of fun.
reminiscing about Serpicool. I love it.
Blessings to you, my friend.
Blessings. I'll catch you next month.